T.J. Hooker returns next week at this time. Now a special presentation.
Please support the Word Balloon podcast by going to patreon.com/wordballoon. Become a part of the League of Word Balloon listeners. That's patreon.com/wordballoon.
Kingdom Come is 4 separate issues, 48 pages apiece. It was an all-immersive kind of lifestyle for me.
It blew people away. I mean, this was the most sought-after book there was.
This was something very new, very different.
No one had seen anything like that at that scale before.
It was amazing.
I never thought from anything that people would still be talking about this book 25 years later.
There were voices and lightnings and thunderings. This was my dream.
Welcome back, everybody. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I'm always happy to welcome my friend Rob V back to Word Balloon. Rob, terrific to see you, man. Well done, as always. Good to have you back.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to be on here and to chat with you.
You got great things going on in the DC universe, Rob. I mean, we've talked about New Gods before, and we'll get to it right away, but also we'll acknowledge we're also going to be talking about Resurrection Man, a great Black Label series that you're doing. And really interesting stuff. You've always been into the metaphysical, and certainly it's happening in both of these books.
Yeah.
But also I know in your previous work as well, you're the whole spiritual you'll forgive me because I'm a knucklehead.
Sure.
I was going to say the whole spiritual thing, that intrigues you, obviously.
It does. I mean, less on that sort of personal enlightenment scale or level, but just in that I think I'm someone who loves science fiction and loves science, and my background as an engineer, but also like I was really into physics and theoretical physics when I was studying, and I think the farther away you get from like the normal accepted science and its theories and whatnot, the more science starts sounding like art and like storytelling. And it becomes more philosophical. And I find that thinking about human beings, life, story, also the more you start getting away from the norm, it just makes sense to start thinking about it more metaphysically, more spiritually, more philosophically. And if you notice, like all of the work has both elements of that. Like I did it before in Swamp Thing, and it was both science fiction and very intensely human interpersonal drama. New Gods is very much sci-fi fantasy, but also about human beings and our relationships with each other. And so I think like approaching storytelling that way, my brain just thinks about it that way. My brain just thinks of stories in the same way it thinks of physics and planets colliding and whatnot. So yeah,
that's cool. That's great, man. And again, I think the things you discuss in your books, both the science, the sci-fi, and then also, again, like you said, the human relationships are very evident right now. Oh, Zar Luna joining us right away and says, as a fellow, is it Tamil? I want to say it properly.
Actually, it's Tamil, but nobody can pronounce it because it's a weird L. So Tamil.
Okay,
whatever.
As a fellow Tamil Indian who dreams of writing comics, I just wanted to say I really admire your work. And he wants to know, do you have any advice for someone trying to break into the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I can only give you the advice that, well, firstly, thank you. And yes, go people from India writing more stories. The only thing I can say in terms of advice is from what I did. And I started off writing stories that I felt only I could tell. Like I'd lived in Mumbai for a long time and I knew what that city felt like. So my first book was a crime noir story set in Mumbai. And even now when I've come to doing like the more superhero, sci-fi, fantasy work, there's always an element of something very personal in all of these stories. And so I think that is the key. You have to find a way to put yourself on paper, in whether other people see it or not. So I don't know if that lets you break in, but it certainly lets you write stories that feel like these are stories only you can write. And that is very valuable, especially in an industry that, puts out 50, 60 books a week. It's hard to find a book that feels like, oh yeah, I can read a few pages of this. Like, I'll give you an example. I can read a few pages of a book and you don't have to show me the credits, but if it's Brian Azzarello, I'll know that's a Brian Azzarello book, and you have to have that sort of personal voice and personal aesthetic and style that goes into the book. I think that's I would take that advice.
That sounds great, man. That's beautiful. And Loopy was pleased with your metaphysical and how you're weaving sci-fi and personal things in there as well. So I wanted to acknowledge that. But also it's funny, we were talking off air and saw the Eisner nominees for the Eisner Awards, and congratulations, man! You got a few nominations, 4 nominations.
Yeah, 4 nominations. Detective Comics alongside my whole team and alongside Tom Taylor and Mikhail Hanin on their part of the narrative as well. Rare Flavors, so that's for Best Continuing Series. Rare Flavors got nominated for Best Limited Series. I've been nominated for Best Writer, and I think the One Hand Six Fingers got Best Album Format Reprint. Both of those together. So we're nominated. So I'm nominated alongside Dan and Lawrence and Sumit and Aditya and Tom for that one. It's been an exciting day to see all those nominations come in.
That's beautiful, man. That's excellent.
Evan Cagle nominated again for his absolutely fantastic covers on Detective, and Philippe nominated for Best Art on Rare Flavors as well.
That's beautiful, man. All right, there you go. Julius, congratulating you on the Eisner nominations. And our buddy Dean Haspiel shows up as well. Hey,
thanks, Dean.
Which is very cool. Obaid has a couple comments. Just wanted to ask if there's even a little Dawn Runner can come back. By the way, that issue 4 was one of my favorite issues ever. I'm assuming he's talking about New Gods, obviously.
Well, no, he's talking about Dawn Runner. I did a book with Evan at Dark Horse. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know that Dawn Runner is coming back because I think it was envisioned as a single series, one and done story, really. But Evan and I have other collaborations planned further down the line. Once our time on New Gods is done.
Beautiful. That sounds great. King of New York also says loved One Hand and the Six Fingers, as well as another great DC group of heroes that you introduced, the Vigil. We talked about that last time.
Yeah, I wanna return to that at some point. But we were talking earlier about health and sanity and doing too much work. So at some point, I would love to return to the Vigil and do a new set of stories with those characters.
That's great, man. Again, you introduced a really interesting, not only new characters, but a new point of view and another area of the DC universe that wasn't explored. I mean, you gave us this very cool intelligence story with very different people and a very different perspective. I thought it was great. Thanks. So King also says, of course, New Gods and Resurrection Man have been awesome, but he loves the Hindu mythology influences. Yes, indeed. So if you don't mind, I do want to start with New Gods because it's been running, and also
have you been keeping up?
What's that? Yeah, 6 is coming out in
I think next week.
A week or so. Absolutely, New Gods 6 is coming out, and I'm already excited. Of course, Black Racer.
Philippe stepped into the art on that issue, and it was this weird conversation. Like Evan and I were talking about that issue, and we were like, "Hey, we should do a Black Racer issue." And I imagined this to be a very Jack Kirby moment where I was like, he's a racer. He doesn't look like he can race against anything. Come on, we got to do a design that makes him look like he could race. And the moment I said that, both Evan and I looked at each other and went, yeah, we've got to get Philippe to draw this one because just the weird, angular, exaggerated anatomy that he does. So I'm very excited for people to see how we've kind of redesigned the Black Racer for this issue.
Yeah, and thank you, DC, because you always give me a sneak look at these things. And without going into detail, I would even say the character of the Black Racer is explored in a way that is more intense than Kirby's stoic kind of that Flying Dutchman. You'll forgive the comparison.
Sure.
But yeah, he was always just up there, and in a weird, I wonder obviously if. All right, I did the Silver Surfer over at Marvel.
Yeah.
All right, now I got a guy on skis, literally.
Yeah. I mean, we had this conversation before where we were like, "Why do you put him on skis?" And somebody just went like, "Because the surfboard was taken."
Yeah. Seems like it.
But yeah, no, I think that's the part of the joy of taking on properties that have been around for a long time and were created by somebody else. I think that's the joy of working in comics for me, is to take what would otherwise be like an absurd idea or a character that's not been explored or a concept that was just somebody's throwaway concept that appeared in a page once, and then take that and go like, I can turn this into something cool. And I think that's really the joy of it for me. I feel like a child when I go in and I'm like, okay, cool, I'm going to do a Black Racer story. Because the thing that really attracted me to the character was that he always had this sort of ongoing competition with Light Ray, right? Like, who's faster? Is Light Ray faster? Is Black Racer faster? And this story kind of plays on that idea, especially with Light Ray's untimely demise in the previous issue. So yeah, I'm excited for people to read it.
Yeah, that was a big shock, man, in issue 5. I of Light Ray, and I mean, we all love Light Ray. It's in his name. He's always been this wonderful, optimistic character. You'll forgive me, and maybe again, this is my own imprinting on the story, but it's almost like Baldur's role in Asgard, where Baldur the Brave, and he's such a great guy, and then he always has to die, and it's like, oh man, what are you doing, man? You're killing. So now you're killing Light Ray. So
it's the classic. It's the classic Greek tragedy style of drama, right? Like the best of us must be taken first, and the rest of us, the ones who err, and the ones who are flawed, and the ones who perhaps don't deserve the glory as much as others, the wars are left to them to fight, and within all those flaws and imperfections, you find a piece of yourself that lets you avenge or bring back or fight back, which is classic Greco-Roman tragedy storytelling. So I'm sorry, Light Ray was too good. He was the best of us.
I also think, and listen, I love anytime any creator has gone back to the fourth world and given us more than what Jack gave us 50 plus years ago. I mean, I thought what Cecil Castellucci did with the Furies was fantastic. I think what Starlin did back in the day, what Walt Simonson did back in the day. But there was this reverence to the initial concepts and looks, and there almost a fear of deviating from what Kirby established. But what I really appreciate with what you and the artists are doing with New Gods is you're really giving us a lot of backstory, a lot of what came before High Father and Darkseid, but also, like we said with the Black Racer design, and really just the look, it's fresh. I mean, it really, people can walk in now and really, get the breadth of what came before, but appreciate the story you're telling.
Yeah, and I think you have to have a level of detachment to do that. And I don't know if it was here or somewhere else, but I joked in that I said, like, I was the fool that walked into the Church of Comics and said, "Who's Jack Kirby again?" And I think there's a truth to that. In that, not in that I didn't know who Jack Kirby was, but his creation. We must separate his creation from him, and so the beauty of stories is that they only live forever and are eternal if you're allowed to play with them, and if you're allowed to change them and reinterpret them and retell them in 100 different ways. The moment stories become absolute, the moment they become objects that you cannot change, they have a shape and you have to retell them, then they kind of they ossify, they die. And so I think the real way to pay respect to somebody and show your love for their work is to take the work and reinterpret it and change it and make something cool with it. And so my love and respect for Kirby does not prevent me from taking his creations and kind of reinterpreting them and redoing the design and retelling them in different ways.
Vito Del Sante, another great writer, agrees and says Ram is slaying it on New Gods. Best it's been in years.
Thank you.
Atomic Hound, New Gods, love this book, Ram. Thank you so much for breathing and taking life from these beloved characters. Congrats on the much deserved success so far. Absolutely, man. And it's interesting the story you're currently telling that started in New Gods. Was it 5 that it started or 4? Where Justice shows up now. Now the basic.
Well,
story,
so far only Superman has shown up, and I have not stopped hearing about it from the fans who are like, "Man, this cover was bait and switch. Only Superman, one last page. What the hell is that?" I'm like, relax. Just wait for the next issue. It's coming. Relax.
I hear you, man. Before we get into, because I love that you've decided. I mean, it is important for the New Gods to stand on their own. It is also obviously the role of DC's all in that we see what everybody's doing and how the DC universe is being, affected by these massive changes that started with the death of Darkseid, what that means in the absolute universe, etc. But before we get to that, I am curious, and especially after what you just said about reinterpreting the New Gods and Kirby in the Fourth World, just wild hair up my butt to ask you this question. With Action 1 going into public domain in just a handful of years, would you ever want to reinterpret that original idea of Superman in any sort of way?
I mean, not really, and I'll tell you why. I think the whole idea of Superman is such an iconic idea that every Superman story really is a reinterpretation of that original iconic idea anyway. Like, I don't think there's a variation of Superman that isn't already encapsulated in the existing Superman. I mean, you can do, dark, edgy things with it and go like, oh, what if Superman was bad? But that misses the point for me entirely. The whole point of Superman is that he is God, and yet his greatest desire is to be entirely human in all the ways that are meaningful and all the ways that matter, right? On a fundamental, I'm not saying he's actually God, but on a fundamental level, it is someone that has all the power in the world looking enviously at the most powerless people in the world and go like, man, I wish I could just have that life. And that life is so beautiful and worth protecting. I wish I wish I didn't have to know all of these terrible things about the world and go out and fight people. I just want to have a good family, to spend some time with people that I love, and that's worth protecting. And because it's such an iconic idea really brought to the page, I don't think, for me, that there is too much reinterpretation needed or warranted there. But that's not the case with the New Gods. The New Gods are an interesting concept. Kirby's art was iconic. His scope and scale was ambitious. But I feel like all of these characters have so much more room for interpretation, not only post Kirby, but post this series. I think you could still come in and take random characters from the corner of some New Gods book and go like, that guy, I'm going to write a book about that guy. And so, yeah, this is more of a retelling, reinterpretation, but based off of the idea that what Kirby created had so much space for somebody else to come in and tell their own story. Whereas I feel like Superman is all encompassing. I mean, is he not the embodiment of the idea of the superhero in itself? So
understood. Obaid wants to know, talking of Superman, what we thought, both of us, about the new Superman trailer. What'd you think?
I mean, I don't really have thoughts. I saw the trailer. I went, cool. That's a cool trailer. I like Crypto. We'll see what the movie's like. It did get me excited. I feel like I made my thoughts clear in the previous answer, in that I feel like the way to do Superman is to do classic Superman with sincerity and not be like, well, what is Superman in 2025? Well, Superman is the same in 2025. He's a good guy. That's it. He is the good guy, and I feel like from everything I've seen about the trailer and the film, that this is a return to that sincerity in the storytelling. And so I'm excited to see that, because huge fan of the OG Christopher Reeves films, and would love to see a return to a character that just that embodies that sort of childish innocence almost, of going like, no, I can be good.
I loved Lois in the trailer challenging him, and I don't think in any personal way, but almost like a devil's advocate of, hey, these are the kind of questions you're going to get if you're going to sit down and do an interview with Lois Lane of the Daily Planet. This is what you better expect. And it was great, because I saw some people like, well, they wouldn't argue like that, and it's like, no, actually, if anyone can get in Clark's face and go, hey, this is what they're thinking, you need to know this. You can't just think, well, I'm doing a good, what's the problem? I'm doing good. And I understand Clark feeling that way too. But I also, for people curious about my thoughts on the trailer, on the audio side of Word Balloon, I released an episode today where I talked about that trailer, the FF trailer, and the Ironheart trailer. And I thought about doing a video, but I'm like, it's easier just to get my thoughts. And also, it's a 3-minute trailer. I'm like, I'm not going to build a half-hour show. I mean, literally, it's like 10 or 12 minutes of me talking about these 3 movies and also some other things I saw recently. And it's just me blathering. So if people really want to hear more of my thoughts on the Superman trailer.
Go hear John's thoughts on the trailer. He probably has way more insightful, better ones than I did. So
no, I don't think so. I don't think so. You're a deeper thinker than I am, my man. Absolutely. Silhouette says, Ram, you're my favorite writer. Keep up the amazing work, dude.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Jeff says, the only folks who get the Fourth World, Kirby, Tom King, Morrison, and Ram improvising on the crazy that came before and shaking things up, the only way to honor Kirby. I agree, Jeff. And
I fundamentally think that's the only way to honor stories in the first place. You have to make them your own. No,
I love in your story that there are echoes of what King and Mitch put into their.
There's stuff from Simonson's Orion in there. There's stuff from Tom and Mitch's Mr. Miracle in there. There's stuff from what's the other one? I've taken characters, not really story stuff, but taking characters from like later New Gods. From like there was a character called Shadowfall in there who wasn't even like an original Kirby creation, but that one we focused on just because I looked at the original design, and no offense to whoever did the original design, but I was like, that doesn't look like an archer. We got to make her a badass archer. Let's do that. All kinds of reasons why you want to take characters, but I'm pretty agnostic about where I take from. So yeah.
Before we get more into the meat of the New God story, did Snyder ask you if you wanted to be part of any of the Absolute stuff? Because I really feel that obviously what you're doing with the New Gods eventually, and I'm not rushing you, Rob, because I want you to tell your story at your own pace.
Sure.
But clearly, the shadow of Darkseid is there, even with his death. And obviously, it created this ultimate universe. But it really feels like you're literally almost straddling the regular DC universe and this new Absolute universe to tell.
Yeah,
your
I mean,
story.
look, there, without spoiling anything, there will be things maybe in issue 9, 10, 11 ish that will make that connection much more pivotal and much clearer. And obviously, Scott and I talked quite a bit about his idea for the Absolute Universe and stuff, and it's just the way I function is I've always been the kind of person to be obsessed with my own ideas first, and I already had the idea for New Gods long before the Absolute Universe was even being discussed. So I knew I was going to be working on this book, and I knew I was going to be doing Resurrection Man, the idea for which I had in 2019. There's just no physical way I could have written anything more. So I was like, Scott, do the Absolute stuff. We'll make the New Gods stuff connect. And that's kind of where this kind of connection came from. So
Interesting. Wow. Well, as we learn more, I will be asking you and Scott to kind of give more detail. Because, I mean, it just...
Yeah. I mean, look, the whole Darkseid thing, the fact that there is a new god here that some of the New Gods think is going to be Darkseid, and the other New Gods are like, no, this is going to be a person that saves us. So all of that is connected in some way to what's happening with the Absolute Universe. So, yeah.
Brian Brewster says you're one of the most interesting and enjoyable pros I've had the honor to speak with. Maybe a podcaster or a blogger of some sort, I'm assuming.
Thank you, Brian.
Very cool. Well, again, I'm glad, and let's get to the meat of what you're kind of playing with in New Gods. This new child has appeared on Earth, and we don't know. I mean, it's that classic. Is this the second coming of Christ, or is it the devil? We don't know, and that's great. And also a bit of an idea of, could this birth mean the end of the New Gods and the fourth world of their time?
Or could it mean the beginning of the fifth?
Yes.
And so I think that, I mean, all of those mechanical things are great for the story and avenues to explore. But I'm also just fascinated by the fact that, but this is a kid, and isn't it the most important thing to let a kid be a kid? And of course, that's not going to happen. And that connects all the way back to Jack Kirby, where both Orion and Scott Free, we should have just looked at and gone like, but these are kids, don't do this to kids. But gods don't worry about things like that. So that's kind of, if you think about it now, then that connects really well back to the issue 1, where issue 1, Scott and Orion are having a conversation, which Orion ends with, Scott, the only thing you can never escape from is who you are. And I think I just finished the script for issue 9, and issue 9 has the same line being spoken by 2 characters, and you'll see the ramification. You'll see how it all comes full circle from there.
That's beautiful, man. No, I really, I don't know, man. I thought I've read a lot of Fourth World in my day, but I really do love the kind of personal buddy relationship you're playing around with Scott and Orion. And truly, I mean, nobody's been in these positions like they have.
But also, like, isn't it the most sibling thing? Like the past few issues that came out, people have been like, oh, it's Orion versus Scott Free. Oh my God, they're gonna finally have that fight. Blah blah. And then they're gonna be surprised, hopefully, pleasantly, when they read the next few issues. But is it also not the most sibling thing to be like, I hate you, I will absolutely fight you with everything I've got, and then 2 minutes later be like, come on, let's go home, let's grab something to eat, And I grew up with sibling relationships that were exactly like that. Like, we would absolutely like have the worst fights and then be the best of friends like 2 minutes later. And I feel like when you're doing that with characters with godlike powers, that is great drama right there.
No, I get it, man. And yeah, I listen, my sister's 5 years older than me. We could not be more opposite, but nobody knows me better than her. And I know her better
And
than
you know,
anyone.
there's that moment
Yeah.
of like, I'm allowed to bully my brother. You are not allowed to bully my brother.
100%. And also, I just love that initial moment of, Scott, Highfather has sent me to kill this child. You got to grab it and you got to get it the fuck away from me, because you're the only guy that can do this. And it really is. It's this beautiful, like, very human moment between these two gods where it's like, hey, man, I got to do this. And I don't
Yeah, I
wanna
mean, that
do
was
this.
my entire endeavor, was to take gods, but then present them with dramas that are like that. Ideally, every reader looks at it and goes like, yeah, I recognize that. I've gone through something like that. Yeah.
How much, and I might have asked you this in the previous conversation, because I and she's not as much in it as she is in Birds of Prey.
Yeah.
But you and Kelly Thompson obviously are both playing with Barda. And by the way, I just love that obviously Scott's on father duty with Olivia and everything. And Barda's just like, yeah, all right, I'll be right there. You know, give me 2 more minutes in bed. And it's like, I'm sure every married couple.
I don't know
is
how
like,
many people
"Yeah, I
caught
can
it,
relate to
but
that,"
she doesn't
you know?
even say, Scott, I'll be right there. She's like back in her childhood. So she's like, Granny, I'll be up in 5 more minutes, because she's thinking about Granny goodness.
Very true. Very true. Do you guys talk about how you're playing Barda in each book?
I mean, we talked about it a little bit before. I've read the Birds of Prey stuff. So actually, weirdly enough, I've tried not to impede too much of what she's doing, because she's had that book running for a long time before New Gods came in. So I didn't want to like throw any wrenches in the works.
Sure.
Obviously, we had a brief chat about like, okay, there's a baby, there's Birds of Prey. How is that going to work? And I'm like, totally cool. She would 100% be okay with leaving the baby with Scott and go like, I got to go deal with this problem. I'll come back. You make sure everything is sorted by then. So, you know, that relationship is and continues to form like the bedrock of how Scott deals with all of this, right? Like, to me, though Scott is a showman and you know, the greatest escape artist, he's always escaped from responsibility in a lot of ways. And now, you know, fatherhood aside, there are bigger responsibilities coming from issues 7, 8 onward. And yeah, I don't want to spoil it, but there's something to be said for someone who will stand by you and watch you make mistakes and be like, cool, I'm not gonna correct you, but I'll be here when you need me to pick you up, you know? And I feel like that's the Scott and Barda relationship. So I'm playing with that in the coming issues.
Great to see Oberon back. Great to, by the way, not only Oberon, and obviously so important to Scott and Barda and the whole Mr. Miracle thing, but Seraphim. And really, it was so great. Dude, I am fascinated by what do you do with the Forever People who were so, at the moment Kirby introduced them, were so of the flower people and these nice happy teens. And I remember in the 80s, somebody tried to, maybe you read it in your research, that somebody brought them back as slightly older and, well, you know, what are they now? Sure. And I got to be honest, I didn't feel like that story. And I don't mean any disrespect to those 80s people that created that. But, you know, it's interesting to see Seraphim now. And how does he mature in the current status quo and everything?
Well, so he's not being very nice so far. So, but no, the thing is, like, for me, the whole, you know, flower power era, that sort of free love, everything's going to be great, we're going to have a utopia era, you know, 2025, how's that going, guys?
Exactly. It didn't happen, unfortunately, man. Yeah, I know. The dream died, sadly. Yeah.
But also, what does that do to you? You know, like someone who's told everything's going to be great, you're going to be awesome, you're the next in line, you're going to be the new god. what does that person do in 2025 when he sees some other kid and everyone's telling that kid, you're going to be the new God. It's going to be awesome. And he's like, listen to me, kid. I've been where you are before. It's not going to be awesome. And so, yeah, I just love the drama of characters like that. You know, not everyone turns out well. And where are the forever people? Why is Seraphan the only one around? And no one's asked. But, you know, Seraphan's power is in these kind of bullets that he has on his belt, and he uses them. One of those bullets from the issue in which he showed up has been missing. Where's that bullet gone? And what did he use it for? Yeah, questions to be answered, perhaps in potentially season 2 of New Gods, but we shall see. Yeah.
God, honestly, Ram, I so hope that this is selling well, and you are able.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
tell
it's done well. Like I've always maintained that, you know, it's a continuing book, and that I had plans for 3 years.
Yeah.
So people have been like, oh, but it says 1 of 12. I'm like, well, I told you all I have to say. You'll see.
Beautiful. Beautiful, man. No, I want it to happen again, because you are obviously filled with these amazing ideas, and you interpreted my next question was, where's Beautiful Dreamer? Where's some of the other kids? And so that's great.
See.
I'm excited, and now I got to reread the Seraphin scenes to really kind of like, all right, wait a minute, because your stuff is so appropriately, it is always so dense in everything that you lay out, Ram. And honestly, I love that. I know some people who really just want a 5-minute read and breeze through the art.
Like if that's what you're looking for, like, I'm not your guy. There's like 30, 40 other guys that you can go read. I hate the idea that someone's reading my book while doing something else. No, I am entirely selfish in that regard. When you read one of my books, if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss like 150 things that happened. And so I want you to pay attention. I want you to engage. And I want you to do a little bit of work. Like, you know, I'm going to reach out 75, 80% of the way, but I need you to reach out 20% of the way.
I get it, man. And again, that's why I love reading your stuff. And it makes that $5 a comic or $4.99 or $3.99.
Yeah.
It makes it worth it, man, because you give us a hearty read that even though it's 20 or 22 pages,
I had a reviewer once come and tell me, like, man, I have to read 50 comics every week to review them for Wednesday. And I can't deal with the density of your book. So I find it really hard to review it. And I said, read 30. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
29 plus 1. You'll be fine.
Silhouette, I didn't know, and maybe you'll explain. Silhouette wants to know, any chance we'll be getting those New Gods spin-offs, books by Dan, Alex, Al, and Kieran. Now, I know, obviously, Al is Ewing, Kieran is Kieran Dwyer. You tell me the others.
Kieran is Kieran Gillen.
He's being smart and letting you all cook.
Yeah, look, I mean, the original idea for New Gods was like, there's a whole universe of storytelling to be done here. But it got like essentially brought down to one book because I was being very ambitious. Yeah, but it's okay. It's been my nature to be ambitious and my job to be ambitious, and it's other people's job to tell me what I can and cannot do. I don't know if we'll get those spin-offs, because a lot of what was going to happen in those books has been incorporated into the main book. So when that didn't happen, this fundamental way we were telling the story changed. So I don't know that we'll get spin-offs, but certainly we'll get everything that was going to happen in those books. We'll get all of that will happen in the main book anyway. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you see yourself eventually being in charge of an event, or like Josh Williamson has, or like Snyder has, or others? I
have very different ideas on how events should work in comics, and I don't think they're particularly done well now. if I may say so. But those are my ideas and my beliefs, and so if there was ever an opportunity to where someone came and said, do it the way you want to do it, then yes. But let me put it this way. I think no one should realize that an event is being written until it actually becomes an event in the book. Right?
Boy. Yes.
You should be reading an event for a year before you realize you're reading an event. And that takes a lot of work on the back end of how these books work. And that takes a lot of coordination. That takes, that would be a full-time job to do that. It's like show running a show, right? So
sure.
I think that's how comic book events should be done. But I don't know that anyone in their right mind in publishing is crazy enough to say, go ahead, Ron, do it.
Well, and also, yeah, it's kind of against what they want to do in terms of marketing, where they don't want to be subtle. I love your television comparison, because you're right. You put seeds down in the first couple episodes, and then all of a sudden you're at the end of a season. It's like, oh, now all that shit's starting to pay off. Wait a minute, we were involved in a much bigger story than we realized. And yeah, that's counterproductive.
But I don't think it's counterproductive to marketing and sales, because don't market the event, market the events that are happening in the books, right? So let's say big thing X is going to happen 1 year down the line. Don't market the big thing X. Start marketing everything from A to W. And you'll see, and people are smart enough. So if you start marketing everything from A to W, they're going to see, oh, X, Y, and Z is coming at some point. And there, you've already done your marketing for the event.
That's fair. And I suppose that's what's happening with the Absolute story right now.
Yeah. Again, the Absolute Universe stuff is super interesting, but also because it has such a focused vision from the people who are running that. So I also feel like, you don't want to just do the same thing people have been doing for 20 years. So I definitely have weird ideas about events and the way they should be written.
Slightly different question, but similar to one earlier we got in terms of how to break in. Sid wants to know, I really enjoy your new Gods run. I'm an aspiring writer, another writer from India, and would love to hear your advice on how to establish myself in the Western comic industry.
Okay, well, we'll do a different piece of advice, because I already said, develop your own voice and have a unique perspective. And as someone from another country, from another society, you're already kind of well equipped to have that uniqueness to your own voice. The second piece of advice I would give is make your own stuff. I know people love to say and use the term industry, but really, you're a freelancer, and you're not an employee of a company. You're a freelancer, and so it's in your best interest to make your own stuff. Don't wait or be looking for permission or support from somebody else. Like, someone will discover my talent. Not going to happen. You think you're talented? Put your talent on the page. You think you're talented? Put in the effort to go find an artist who believes in you as much as you believe in them. Work with them, make a comic, put it out, learn how it's printed, learn how lettering works, learn how coloring works. By the time you get to talk to a publisher in the industry, you should already know how a comic book is made. And if you're in that position, it helps you in the long run, because you're not being hired to fill in a gap somebody else has in their vision. You're being hired because people find value in your vision of how to do things. And those are two very different things, right? Like, you can be hired to fill in a gap, in which case you're not the one that's being hired. It's the gap filling that needs to be done. Or people can come and look at your work and go, I like what this guy does and I want to hire him. Then you're being hired for what you do, not for the gap that you can fill. And I think those are two very different ways of approaching your career as a freelancer.
Well said. I want to obviously get into Resurrection Man. And as we do, sadly, you lost one of your collaborators on the project, and that's the great Butch Geis, who passed away just a couple weeks ago.
The original creator and the person who drew that page.
Yeah, I grabbed a couple of these images, Ram, because it's great, and I'm really glad that that was part of the initial plan, I assume, to allow for, because again, you're taking this established character, and I mean, in a weird way, it reminds me of what Denny O'Neil and Dennis Cowan and Bill Sienkiewicz did with The Question, taking him from where he started as a Ditko character and taking him on a very metaphysical journey. In the case of Resurrection Man, it makes a lot of sense, but we get these very great grounded images from Butch for the framing. So tell me about bringing Butch back and using him the way that you wanted to tell this story.
Yeah, look, I mean, there were multiple motivations. The most obvious motivation of that being, most people went, "Who is Resurrection Man?" when the book was announced, right? And so it made complete sense for our page one to be, "Who is Resurrection Man?" Boom, there you go. That's Resurrection Man. But I think now that issue one is out, I can talk about it. When you get to the second page, you realize it's a kid reading this comic, and she's going through her grandfather's collection of comics. So it's one of those things where the comic exists technically in the in-world story, if you will, of Resurrection Man. And you think that's just a sort of cool wrinkle that we tossed in there. But no, there's a plan for that. The all of it will make sense. The second thing is, thematically, on some level, we're talking about, how stories exist and how stories proliferate, and how we tell stories, to me, is very much tied in with the idea of reincarnation. If you look at reincarnation as a very literal thing, sure, it's a person dies, they get resurrected, they come back either in a different body, different lifetime, whatever it is. But if you take it less literally, like every time you tell a story, you tell it slightly differently, you're a different person, right? And we tell everything we go out when we interact with other people, they're built off of stories that we make up about ourselves, right? Like, sure, there is the objective truth, and there is the world as you see it, with yourself at the center of it. And when you're a father, you're a different world, different center to when you're a friend, to when you are a competitor, to when you're a professional. These are all us retelling stories about ourselves, and therefore resurrecting ourselves for different occasions, if you will. So there's a commentary to be had about that in the story. And so these page ones by Butch in every issue start getting increasingly more metaphysical as you go on. You realize that, there's a commentary to be had here about multiple versions of the character existing and having multiple origin stories, and what that means, and why comics are beautiful, because we're allowed to resurrect and reinvent and reinterpret these stories all the time.
We're a bit away from issue 3, so I will not spoil the Butch image, but I do want to, and I had to grab the black and white version of the image that starts issue 2 with Resurrection Man there, with the 90s JLA, the Howard Porter, Grant Morrison JLA. There's Blue Superman right there in the front.
Kyle Rayner's right there.
Who'd you just say?
Kyle Rayner. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Absolutely, man. Yeah, I love this. And man, God, it is ironic timing, sadly, that this is Butch's last work, but it really is a celebration of what he was, just some of the great images that he gave us, not just at DC. I mean, I remember 20 years ago when he was with Brubaker on Captain America, and him and Mark Waid doing Ruse back in the day, and all the different companies that he worked for. But this is great. So tell me about talking to Butch about doing this, and
So very early on, before this book was even greenlit, we reached out to all three creators, Andy Lanning, Dan Abnett, and Butch, and said, this is what we're planning to do. Just want to make sure you guys are all happy with that. And Andy and Dan, I think, were very kind in that they were like, we love this character, but if it's Ram doing something, I think it'll be cool. So let's get him to do it. And then with Butch, we went to him and said, so I had already had this idea of doing the one-page intros to every issue. And I had reached out to Brittany and I said, would it be cool if we asked Butch to do each of these pages? And she was like, oh, I think he would love that. And so we went and asked, and it was immediate. He was like, yeah, of course, I would love to do. And even then, Butch had said, like, my health is not the greatest, so I don't really do a lot of pages, and my speed isn't what it used to be, but I would like to do these one-page things. And I imagine, I hadn't talked to him about it, but I imagine it would have been nice to be like, hey, this creation I made all those, like, literally decades ago, isn't it cool that I'm doing another page for that character? And so, yeah, I hope that was a moment of some kind of joy or catharsis for him. Unfortunately, I mean, I think we had issues for the first 4 pages done. Unfortunately, obviously, he couldn't work on the last page for the last issue because he was struggling with his health by then. And this is like the serendipity of life, right? Like I was talking to you about this before the show. I had already worked with Mike Perkins on Swamp Thing. And if you look at Mike's work and you look at Butch's work, for me, certainly, I look at them and go like, oh, I see the connection here. So it turns out Mike was a protege of Butch's. And he says, Butch Geist was my mentor. Everything in comics I owe to Butch. And so it was lovely that Mike said, I would 100% want to step in and draw that last page. And the story was already written by the time we got the news that Butch had passed. Like I'd already finished writing the whole thing, but there might be a case for actually going back and seeing if we can add in a little bit of an homage to him in the last issue. Yeah,
that's great. I hope you find a way of incorporating more of Butch's stuff. So. Is it a 5-issue story then for Black Label?
It's 6 issues.
6.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 6 issues.
Very cool.
Because all the Black Label books are, I think, that page length in general.
Okay.
So yeah, 6 issues.
Very cool.
And
so we
it goes to some very weird places.
Well, we'll get to the story, but so we are going to get a little bit more of what Butch made for the series.
Of course. Yeah.
All right, great. Because issue 3 is coming out in a couple of weeks, everybody. Again, I've seen the future. I always feel like I have to do my Albert Brooks voice when I've seen the future. but yeah, so no, another great issue. But yes, it is great because now, I mean, like I keep calling him Resurrection Man rather than Alex or rather Matthew or some of his
Mitch
other
Shelley.
names. What is it? What is his name now?
Shelley.
Mitch Shelley.
Yeah, Mitch Shelley is the OG name. Obviously, in this book, he's got a gajillion names because I can't imagine someone alive in the prehistoric era going like, "And here's Caveman Mitch." That would have been weird. Oh, forget. Imagine Renaissance era. People are like Michelangelo and Raphael, and like, and Mitchell, whatever you want to call me.
No, I like thinking of Da Vinci and these people calling him Mitch. And there's Mitch. Yeah, great. Yeah, all right. Mitch is going to pay my house later while I'm paying the Sistine Chapel. Sounds great, Leonardo. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
But no, it's great because again, I was aware of the character, but I didn't read it back then. So I don't know if in the original run they did show Resurrection Man, Mitch, in the in his various at other points of the
no. So the time and era thing was never a thing in the original issue. The original issue, the concept that I really fell in love with was that he dies, and then when he dies, he comes back with powers related to how he dies. And it was one of those moments where I looked at that and I went, "Huh, that's cool." And then my brain went, well, what if he just dies like a regular person? What happens then? And I went, well, of course he died at the time. And oh my God, I have a pitch. I should start writing this down. So that's kind of how the book was born. I didn't even read the original series. I read the DC Who's Who directory of characters. And I thought the name was really cool. So I read the description. I had this idea for doing a story that was set across time. And then I went, okay, I should go read the original series. Then I read the original series. And this was all like 2019. So it's not like I've had this story in my body. It's weird. The story is born off of a Who's Who page. And then I fell in love with the character. So
that's great, man. No, and again, what I love too about, I mean, listen, I love the metaphysical story that he is going through. Because again, this is your meat, man. This is your wheelhouse. And it's great to again see these different shades of these ideas that you are questioning and discussing. But also to set them in the backdrop of, well, there he is in World War II. And you know, you get the even though it's a Japanese story, you get the reference to, well, Hitler's got the Spear of Destiny, which is very DC universe, and why certain things can happen during the war. I was just discussing this with Gavin Guidry, who's, you know, doing JSA with Jeff Lemire. Yeah. So, and then we get this great Atom. I love, you know, Ray Palmer and the Atom. and so we get this little Atom adventure with Resurrection Man. And it's
and then there's other characters show up in every issue. There's you know, Saber-Tooth Tiger era Resurrection Man in there at some point. There's 90s, 2000s era Resurrection Man in there as well. The whole thing was to, because, you know, we all ask this question, like, why am I here? Why was I put here? What is my purpose? Now imagine most people will never find the answer to that, but we'll try to come up with an answer that spans their lifetime. You know, maybe I was put here to tell stories. Maybe I was put here to help other people. Maybe I was put here to fight wars, whatever it is. We all come up with reasons to tell ourselves in terms of what our existential purpose is in life. Now imagine having to figure out what is your purpose across all of existence, right? And that becomes very difficult. And when we run into Resurrection Man at the beginning, he's someone who said, maybe there is no purpose to me. Maybe I'm better off just like being a regular person and not trying to search for some grand meaning to my existence. And then right when he's had that, he's like, okay, that was great. I am happy. He's visited by a version of himself that's like, no. There's definitely a greater purpose. You have to do all of these, you know, grand things. And again, like, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, like, is there a grander purpose than just living a good life? I don't know. I'm not so sure.
Neither is the character. And again, I won't give away. I've seen issue 3. And there's a great encounter with a established DC character. I'll leave it at that. And it's like, oh yeah, of course, you know. And it's you know, that's great. Silhouette, I wonder if I could tie this into Resurrection Man. It says Rom should write a mini or a Legion of Superheroes member on a Legion of Superheroes member. They have the best names ever. Well, might we see Resurrection Man's story go beyond our known present of the DC universe without spoiling?
No, I mean, they're not. I mean, to the more specific. Well, the story definitely goes beyond what we know of the DC universe now, but in its own way. The Legion is not in there.
Okay.
But Legion of Superheroes is certainly an amazing property, one that I love, but obviously not working on them at this point in time. Maybe a thing for the future.
That's cool. I always feel sympathy for anyone who has to take on the Legion, because as the present changes, there's always this feeling that, well, that has to dictate the
Yeah.
future and the look of the future changing. And even, Bendis's version of the Legion, very different from Paul Levitz's version of the Legion, and
Yeah,
so on and
yeah.
so forth and everything.
Yeah, but I think that's the joy of it. Now imagine if you could actually tell a story in the present and the future where you had to combine those two things. That would be fantastic, right? Like, imagine the future being aware of the present, the relative present that we're talking about, and then going, oh, we can't let them do this because that would mean we don't exist. There's cool stuff to be done like that with Legion. Yeah.
I hear you, man. Absolutely. Do you believe in reincarnation yourself?
Not really. I mean, it's weird, right? Like, belief is a very complicated question. I don't believe in anything that I can't, or rather, I don't see the point in questioning whether I believe in something that I can't tangibly examine, right? But I love the idea of questioning why we believe in things that we cannot tangibly examine. And so I'm fascinated and enamored and in love with the idea of metaphysics and reincarnation and God and spiritualism and all of that. But I'm fascinated in a way that a kid is fascinated with a radio, in that I want to take it apart and see how it all works. Not fascinated in that I go like, the radio is my savior and I shall bow down to it. So
I'm hip. I get it. That's cool. Sid, another process question from Sid. I'm curious how you developed your skills in writing in the English language, especially for Western comics. Was there a specific process or experience that helped you?
At one point, I had a conversation with a linguistics professor who said, you are a linguistic chameleon. It is a innate talent. I grew up, obviously, as a lot of people in India do, knowing 5 or 6 different languages. But I'd always been good at picking up languages, and more importantly, picking up cultural intonations and significances in languages. So
sure,
when I hear people speaking, like I'm listening to why people from New York speak a certain way, and why people from the South speak a certain way. Why do Brits speak a certain way, and why does the Scottish accent sound like this? And I'm fascinated by language in general, and where the roots of words come from. And I think when you're like that, you tend to pick up a lot of things about how people talk and how people sound, without necessarily going, I did this to train myself in writing good comics. I think comics aside, I think generally writing well is a teachable skill. You read a lot. You understand that writing is not just about like putting factual working sentences down on paper. Like, your choice of words makes a huge difference. Whether a sentence is 5 words long or 15 words long makes a huge difference. Read outside of comics, read people like, Paul Auster, who's probably my favorite prose writer. And you're talking to another writer, because I'm talking to Dan and Waters, and we're talking. I said, Paul Auster's writing feels like you're on a train and you don't know if you can stop it. It has this kind of forward momentum that just pushes you into every next sentence, and you can't stop. And it's not because he's using like complicated words or anything. It's very simple, straightforward English, but it's written with this kind of real momentum to where you start a page and before you know it, you're 16 pages in and you're like, I didn't realize I read for that long. And he can do that because that is good writing. And I don't think a lot of people coming into comics realize that writing is not just about like, I described stuff on a script and I sent it off, or I made my person sound like they're talking authentic dialogue. No, every choice makes a difference. Just like an artist, whether you use a thick line or a line with varying line weight, or you're using a watercolor, or you're using rotring pens. It all makes a difference to how your art looks. And so the same is true of writing. So in general, to improve your writing, I would just say read widely. And then to write for American comics is a matter of picking up how Americans, Europeans, Brits, Indians, how we all speak and how we all speak differently. I think that's important to writing good dialogue.
As someone who has been myself not as well read in and well viewed in anime and manga, I've always heard that there are some intangibles that are indicative of the Japanese mentality and just the way they perceive things and say things. Would you say that is the case as well as the dumb American guy
100%.
And so there is an Indian kind of frame of mind that is very different from a Western.
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
I think you can read people's cultural background in their work. There is a reason why. I mean, I put it this way. I read Murakami, who's a Japanese author and largely translated into English. I watch Japanese anime and I've seen Japanese film, and I can draw a triangle between those things and go like, yeah, I can see how all of these things are in conversation with each other. I can see how the culture that made this also made this. And the same is true of, well, let's bring it closer to comics, right? Like, there's a reason why the heyday of DC Magic happened when all the British people were writing Vertigo books, right? And you know, not to throw shade on anyone, but we've had those characters explored by a whole slew of writers who came after, who don't have that cultural Brit connection, and all of a sudden the magic becomes kind of like fireballs and laser beams. It's not about that. And my theory is this. My theory is that American literary canon and culture is so obsessed with the literalism of everything. Like, no, you know, a mountain is a mountain, a gun is a gun, water is water. There's not other things. It is this. That's so Hemingway, right? Like in a lot of ways, like, no, don't tell me about the beauty of blah, blah, blah. No, you don't know what beauty is until you've held a gun in your hands. It's so American. Whereas to me, like, I look at British culture and I go like, yeah, of course they wrote this weird stuff about like a guy who, you know, is a Liverpudlian, but also has a deal with the devil and is performing magic. Constantine is the most culturally ingrained character that I have read in comics, and I am always surprised when an American writes them well. In fact, the only time I have been surprised is probably Azzarello's take on the character for the Hellblazer book. I think everybody else, to my mind, that I enjoyed reading who wrote them well was British.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Indian take on that, I think, is influenced by its own culture. And forget my stuff. You can read it in the way Salman Rushdie writes his books. You can read it in the way, Satyajit Ray directs his movies. And there is an Indian pathos that is present in all of that work.
That's really interesting, Ram. Truly, and again, you'll forgive the dumb American farmer that, you know. Again,
no, I did not say that. I didn't say. I did not use the words dumb or farmer. I said literalism. Americans don't do magic well because for them, an object that is in front of them could not potentially be anything else.
Yeah. No. And what I'm saying is, no, not that, and not the Hemingway comparison. I was laughing because I get it, and certainly having read as much Hemingway as I had, I'm like, no, that's Hemingway. Dashiell Hammett is like that as well.
Of course.
But Chandler would try to be a little more allegorical, and things.
Sure.
Despite that,
and look, there's always exceptions and products of different past, etc. But I think these are cultural things. They run in the arterial parts of every society. I don't know who said it, but I think it's a quote at the beginning of the Narcos TV show that says, South America, I understand why magic realism, where this was the only place where magic realism could have been born. And it says so much about the fact that, you know, it was the Borgeses who you know, made magic realism a popular thing. And so, yeah, it makes total sense to me.
That's great, man. That's fantastic. Let's see here. Oh, Radio Dormouse wants to know, and again, this is another Brit that wrote Constantine. Did you like Garth Ennis's Hellblazer? I actually disliked it because I don't think he handled the magic well, despite being Irish, possibly due to his atheist materialism. Ennis turned it from a supernatural horror into a drama.
Yeah, but you know, there are other authors from Britain who approached it that way. I mean, you look at Ellis's take on the book, and there was zero magic in Ellis's take. If anything, Ellis's take was like, "What is this magic stuff? This is just stuff people make up to make themselves feel better. The world is a horrible, terrible place, and it doesn't need magic to make it that way." That was the thesis of the Ellis run. No, I think my appreciation of the Brits' writing is not, it doesn't even boil down to that level of specificity. It's just the ability to look at someone doing magic and interpreting that as something that could potentially exist without being entirely genre and hokey in the reality that it exists in. Whereas anyone else says magic and it's either a guy in a top hat or someone casting fireballs, you know, which is like the least interesting version of magic to me.
I always would tell the British writers that I would have on, like James Robinson, for example, comes immediately to mind, that I always appreciated the British or Australian, in the case of Tom Taylor, that they would see these American heroes and have a very different take on whatever was traditional. It almost goes back to what I was saying about how some people just revered Kirby and the way he did the Fourth World,
yeah,
and they didn't want to mess with it. Whereas these people would come in and go, no, did you ever think of Roy Harper this way, in the case of James Robinson, for example? You know?
Yeah, but I think also because there's an inherent sort of irreverence ingrained in the history of British writing, and perhaps more so in the kind of writers and writing that led these creatives to write in comics. It was, you know, during the heyday of you know, punk rock, indie wave era. And so all of that writing has an inherent rebellion and a irreverence of any form of authority in it. And it shows.
I completely agree, man. No, you know, you compare the way they handled Judge Dredd, for example, and that whole thing is absolutely these writers.
And you know, that is not to be understated. The influence of 2000 AD on British writers and the way those British writers then wrote American superheroes cannot be understated. Yeah.
Honestly, man, I've had like several conversations over the years with Pat Mills, and it's always an education. And truly, it's like, just open your brain, man, and start talking, because I learn a lot, and I learn a lot from you, Ram. And I mean that sincerely, man. And again, you know,
I don't nearly have as much history with comics as a lot of these people do, but I'm fascinated by why people write about, write the way they do, and why people write about the things that they write about. So
yes. Well, again, I'd say the same thing about. Yes, he said marital law. Radio Dormouse. He was just gushing about Pat Mills loves martial law. Absolutely, man. No, again, we're learning a lot about you. Daryl has a thought on Raymond Chandler. Chandler was born in the United States, but grew up and was educated in England. Late in his career, he planned a collection of stories based on reality with a fantasy element. Yeah, I wonder. I remember. There was some early HBO 90s things that were kind of based on some ideas that I thought were kind of like unfinished Chandler ideas and things. I don't know, but I'm a sucker for that era.
But yeah, I mean, but you also look at Poe, and Poe had a long and storied time in England, and you can see that he very much picked up his Gothic influences over his time here. So. I'm not saying all American writers are like that. I'm just saying the cultural vein is one of literalism. But yeah.
I hear you, man. I listen. I honestly, like I said, this conversation has inspired me to go back and read some Hemingway and things like that. Because no, I immediately my brain went, oh no, I know exactly what Rob's saying. That's fantastic.
If an alligator is an allegory for a problem, surely you must wrestle with it.
Outstanding, man. Rob, you're killing it, dude, and I'm really happy for you, and I'm glad that you are taking care of yourself, as we were both kind of sharing health war issues. And because we want you around for a long time, and you're just, this is great. I'm so glad that you are finding interesting ways of exploring these areas of the DC universe that you are. And in addition to acknowledging, acknowledging the great work you did on Nocturne. Well, Nocturne was a specific story, but whatever the Eisner nom is for your further run on Detective. And man, also, again, everybody, you really got to go back and check out the Hand and Finger books that were linked together.
Finger.
That
sounds dirty, John.
Give me, it doesn't. Give the proper titles, Ron. My eyeballs are too short. These two great image books that were
the one hand and the 6 fingers. Yeah. You're not
the
far
6
off.
fingers, everybody. Yes, that still sounds dirty, but all right. And 1 cup apparently as well. So. That's great, man. And these are they're traded now. They're collected, right?
They are collected. Yeah, they're collected in one book here. The French did a very cool thing. I think that's part of why we're nominated, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's for the Image collection. But the French did a cool thing where they released issue 1 of each story at the same time as a single volume as well. So it's been really cool to see the number of different ways people have found to read these 2 stories and how their appreciation of it varies on how they read them as well. Yeah,
that's cool. You'll forgive me. I was listening, but I wanted to acknowledge because people were asking questions that we already covered. David wanted to know if the Forever people are in the cards. And again, yes, don't worry, man. He's got you covered. So that's great.
Yeah, look, I've picked up the more obscure references from the Kirby stuff. So rest assured, the less obscure references are all coming. So
outstanding, man. Well, again, in a couple weeks, we will get the next chapters of both New Gods and the Forever People. Forever People, excuse me, Resurrection Man. And this is just a couple weeks away, everybody. Really getting into the Black Racer. And, again, wonderful stuff with him and Light Ray coming up. And, this amazing Resurrection Man series. And issue 3 only a couple weeks away, correct? I think. Or next week.
I think issue 3 is a month away.
Okay, a month away. All right.
Yeah, issue 2 just came out. I think May 2nd week, first week. Issue 2 just came out, so we're about a month away. Yeah.
There you go, man. Well, again, I'll be bugging you in a few months to catch up on everything.
Always happy to come talk. Yeah.
Means a lot, Ram. Honestly, you know that. Really, it's been really great getting to know you over these years, and really, I just, as always, you're gonna get your money's worth, everybody, and I'm sure you already know that if you're listening to this conversation and are a fan of Ram's work. Always amazing story in a very small package, but densely packed with a lot of ideas from Ram V. So it's always good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for watching. I'm not sure, I was going to have a conversation with Matt Bors, who's doing the Toxic Avenger right now. I don't know if we're talking still or not because there might be a scheduling issue. But if not, tomorrow I'm going to talk to another DC creator, Al Ewing, and we're going to talk about Absolute Green Lantern. But we're going to talk about his Marvel stuff. He's killing it on Thor, that amazing run he had on Hulk. My first ever conversation with Al Ewing, longtime fan. So first time encounter. Look forward to that this week on Word Balloon Live.
Nice. Until next time. Enjoy his voice.
You're enjoying his voice?
Have you ever heard Al talking?
I've never heard Al speak. Tell me.
You're gonna have a blast. He's got the perfect radio voice for you. So
like Ben Percy. Ben Percy's
yeah.
Voice
very much so.
Good to know. All right, I'm looking forward to it. That's great. Until then, everybody, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.